Hey, welcome to episode 31, you guys. I am Jennie O'Connor, and I help multi-passionate creators slay imposter syndrome so that they can embrace being visible, grow their influence, and finally do the thing that scares them. Like booking your first podcast interview ever, in spite of all the butterflies, because you know that to become a published author with a following, you have to step out of the shadows and into the spotlight. Exactly the kinds of things that we talk about on this show. If you are already subscribed, you know I love you, right? I do. I love you so much. And if you are just tuning in for the first time, do be sure to hit subscribe because I've actually got a few more episodes before I wrap up the Courage series. And it has been such a labor of love because I think that the subject of courage is very near and dear to my heart. It's what I teach all of my clients about on the regular. And I also have an extra special episode that I'm preparing for you guys right now on perfectionism. As a recovering perfectionist, I have a ton to say on the subject, as per usual. Today, though, I'm going to start with a little bit of a story. So I have an online business mentor. Her name is Kelly Dawn. She's a spiritual business coach and a super badass witchy woman. I absolutely love her. Go follow her on Instagram. And she has this uncanny ability to do a podcast episode that is the very lesson that I need to hear that particular week. It's absolutely a case of when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And that very thing happened a few months ago. I was standing in my kitchen, doing dishes as you do, listening to podcasts as you do. And her specific episode, and I will actually link to it in case you want to give it a listen, was on limiting beliefs around money mindset. And she was basically just going through a list of the limiting beliefs that she runs into again and again and again with her own clients. So she's just kind of going down a list and I'm like, yep, I agree. So she started with like, rich people are bad people. And I was like, no, it's not a rule. Like some of them are bad, but some people with money are really good. Like Dolly Parton, right? Then she said, I don't deserve to have all the money I want. And I was like, what? Who would say that? That's crazy. And I should say here that if you believe that, so many people do, and I will get to that. If you believe that, I'm not calling you crazy. I'm just saying my heart breaks. Like, it's so sad and subsequently crazy that so many people would believe that they're not worthy of having all of the money they want. So I'm agreeing with her. I'm like, oh no, that's not true. Oh no, that's not true. Like, why would anyone think that? That's crazy. Like, none of that's true. And then she said, I can't be rich without working super hard and struggling and fighting tooth and nail in order to have all that money. And I was like, oh, that's true. And it was like this light bulb went off over my head because it was funny because I was definitely like in robot mode. I was like doing dishes and I was like, yep, not true. No, definitely not. Okay. And then I was like, oh no, that's totally true. And I was all, whoa, stop in your tracks. Why? That was fact. Like the words came out of my mouth. I love to talk to myself, obviously. And I was just like, oh yes, that's definitely right. And then I went, whoa, where did that come from? So I am eternally grateful to Kelly Dawn for bringing to light the fact that I still have limiting beliefs around money, which is crazy because I've done so much work around it, but it's just proof positive that we are all works in progress and that rewriting our limiting stories is probably something we will have to do until the day that we die. But what it made me realize was how seriously I needed to question my assumptions. So that's what this episode is about. Today's episode is about finding the courage and giving you the exercises, the tips and tools and tricks so that you can begin to question your assumptions. So my best friend, who I always talk about in these episodes because he seems to have self-development down on lock, like I've just never met anyone more self-actualized. He has two, not one, but two quotes around assumptions. The first one is never assume, it makes an ass out of you and me, which always makes me chuckle. And then he also says assumption is the mother of all fuck ups. Both are very valid, so we'll get to that. In the very first installment of this series, the integrity episode, I talk about how we all live in a world shaped by our interpretation. So I will link to that episode. If you haven't listened to it, listen to it. Just even for that brief part, if you don't listen to the whole episode, it was so game-changing for me, because it is all well and good to say we create our realities. So choose different thoughts. Choose happy thoughts. Don't choose sad thoughts. Okay, yeah, I'll get right on that. Thanks. Moving on to the next. Like, even if you're into woo, that's like a little bit too woo to attach any sort of credence to, right? What I explain in that episode was a book I found written by a neuroscientist, Rick Hansen, where he explains, like, with actual scientific reasoning, how this is true. This is 100% true. This is a fact. And when you hear it explained in such a way, it sort of attaches in your brain, and suddenly you're like, oh, this is fact. We create our realities, and I can use this fact to my advantage or not. And also, why would I not? All right. And so then you actually start to take steps for it. Because when it feels like elusive and vague and woo, you're like, oh, I'll get to that tomorrow. But when you're like, oh, holy cow, this is real, I'm going to start right this second. So listen to that episode. It'll make a little bit more sense in the context of what I'm describing here. But basically, what we do, the actions that we take are based on the beliefs that we have, and the actions that we take happen within the reality that we've defined for ourselves based on those beliefs. So it's either a story that we've created or one that we have allowed to come to be based on external influences. So stuff that our parents told us, or our teachers told us, or that we got from society or media, or that kind of thing. The outside influences that tell you how life should look and be and feel. Based on these stories, our lives are either limited or expanded. So here is where we have the power to live in a limited reality where we can't have the monetary abundance that we want, or the relationship happiness we want, or to rewrite that story and have everything we've ever wanted. Our stories are based on our opinions, our assumptions, our expectations, prejudices, and beliefs. So all of that sort of mushes together to create the world that I see through my eyes. So as you can tell then that, like, your reality is not going to look like mine, even if we are sitting in the same room and experiencing, for all intents and purposes, the same experience. Your prejudices will cause you to have one kind of experience, and mine will cause me to have another. So we need to be really, really careful then not to delude ourselves into thinking that our interpretation is the absolute truth, rather than just our perspective on something. And that, I think, is why we're having so many fights online about, I don't even want to get into it, vaccines, not vaccine, masks, no mask. Everyone is acting from a place of my truth is the absolute truth, rather than my truth is the interpretation with which I grew up, or that my parents gave me. That would change everything if we could just be a little bit more self-aware regarding that. So when it comes to, like, external influences, I think that far more often we are carrying beliefs from other generations without realizing it, more so than we are creating the story from scratch. But it's obviously a combination of both of those things. But when it comes to external influences, I wanted to know where my limiting belief about money had come from. So to give you a little bit of backstory, my mom ran her own business for as long as I could remember, and it was successful until the day she retired. She made a lot of smart investments. She's just business savvy. My own friends who have businesses have often looked to my mom for advice, or just as sort of like a beacon of how to do it right. So we're not like uber wealthy, we're middle class, but comfortable. And I couldn't imagine that there would be any limiting beliefs around money in that kind of environment, right? So a few weeks after I heard that podcast episode, I was home talking to my mom, and I had actually created a money mindset quiz, and I'll link to that. It's fun. It's 2 minutes. It will show you all the things standing in the way of you having all the money you want. So if you want more money, take the quiz. So I took a lot of those limiting beliefs that people have and put them into the quiz to ask, whether or not just immediately do you identify yes with this, or like, no, that's not true. Then you can sort of uncover what is standing in your way. And I was giving her some examples, and I said the one, I was like, do you think you deserve to have all the money you want? The reason I asked her about that one in particular is because after I made the quiz, everyone who took the quiz said no to that question, I think except for one person. And I was so sad. Why? Why don't people think they deserve to have all the money they want? So I asked her if she felt that way. And she was also multitasking. So I don't think she heard as the words came out in the context of the conversation. She didn't have the same epiphany that I did. I just said, do you believe you deserve to have all the money that you want? And she was like, no, having a lot of money is really selfish. And then she kept doing dishes. And I was like, oh, this is where I got my limiting beliefs about money. And I would absolutely attribute that to, she was raised by Depression era babies. My grandparents grew up in that time period, and they had such a scarcity mindset. They washed out their freezer bags and reused them, which unfortunately is a weird habit that I've picked up. I don't know. I say it's to be eco-conscious, but who even knows if that's ancestral scarcity mindset that has just I've carried with me. So they passed it on to my mom, and my mom passed it on to me, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just our obligation, if we want to better our lives, to identify where these things are happening and whether or not they're serving us. And if they're not, rewrite that story. So these are the kinds of things, outside of just money specifically, but these are the kinds of things that you might say to yourself if you have limiting beliefs that are running your reality. You might, actually, a friend of mine said this to me recently. It's impossible for me to change careers now. I cannot afford to be a beginner at something new. Okay. What about obesity? Runs in my family, so there's no point even trying to lose weight. It's genetic. It's a lost cause. Okay. I've heard this one before. You can't raise a family and have a career and be good at both. Something has to give. Something's going to slip through the cracks. Some people believe they can never save money because their family has never been good at it. So obviously it's a family trait to be hopeless at saving. You're just might as well not even try. Here's a great one. All men, given the opportunity, would be unfaithful. So here's the thing. Our brains are built to look for evidence that supports the reality that we've created for ourselves. So we will literally find the men if we believe and it's ingrained in our identity, our belief of ourselves, that all men are unfaithful. We will find the men who are unfaithful because we're all energy. So we are energetically resonating at a vibration that believes that. It's a lower vibration that men can't be trusted. Men are inherently bad. We are resonating at that vibration, and attracts like a magnet. So we are going to attract men into our universe that vibrate, that resonate at the same energetic frequency as we do, fully immersed in that belief that men are bad. Our brains are going to seek out proof, evidence that supports that belief, and all of the good men that exist are going to be in the blind spot that I talk about in the integrity episode. So our brain won't even allow us to see people who vibrate at a different resonance. We will just miss them completely. Our vibration won't even notice their vibration, and it's as if they're in the shadowy corner of the bar in the back. we will simply find evidence to prove ourselves right. That's what our brain and our ego wants to accomplish. We're so right. We're so smart. We know everything. All the men are cheaters. That's why every single man that you know cheats. So stick that in your pipe and smoke it. You might actually be calling in cheaters. Now, if you are, that's okay. Give yourself grace. Forgive yourself. This is not a situation for you to find more things to like add to the stack of why you should beat yourself up and you're a worthless person. Please don't take it that way. But know that once you can identify these stories, you can fix them. So you can make better choices. You can call in better humans. All you have to do is tell yourself that good humans are out there. There are good partners out there for you, rather than there are no good men left. So step one is noticing your stories. And when they are no longer working for you, ditch them. Get new ones. But understand that this is, again, an example of courage begets courage. It takes courage to let go of your old stories because you've invested so much in them. In so many cases, they are ingrained. They are attached to your identity. You don't know any better, for lack of a better term. And your ego doesn't like admitting that it's wrong. So it takes courage to question any authority, somebody else's or your own. It takes courage to question. But in turn, what you get for doing it is so worth it, because then you become your own authority. And it is so courageous to live a life in which you are your own authority, because then you make decisions more easily. You stick to your boundaries without question. You know when to say no to things so that you can say yes to things that are more important. You will have like an internal compass that you can follow. And if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. But in questioning your assumptions and rewriting the stories so that they serve your highest good, you will always be able to trust your own authority, that you're headed in the right direction, that you are doing the thing that best serves you. So those are the stories that you want to find, the ones that let you see your life more clearly, that help you get from where you are now to where you want to go. So we are looking to convert limiting stories into this type of story, the ones that are raising you up. Ways to find your limiting beliefs. There's a couple, because it sounds simple, but it's far easier said than done, because those stories are running in the background most of the time. So on a subconscious level, that's why I created the money quiz, because when someone asks you outright, do you believe this? Suddenly you're able to say, yes, I do. Oh, does this serve me? And then you can question it. But otherwise, your reality just is your reality and you don't question it. So you have to start to sort of identify like trigger actions that will help you say, is this belief mine or does this belong to somebody else? First of all, I spoke in a few episodes back, last episode before, not really sure about shoulding on yourself. Anytime you hear a thought come through your mind that says, I should do this, I should join the family business, I should invite the new neighbors over for dinner, but like something inside of you doesn't want to do that, you just feel obligated for whatever reason, that is a great opportunity to question that story. On whose authority should you do this? Does that serve you? Another time when you can examine what it is that you're saying to yourself is anytime you're using an absolute. So all, never, everyone, all the good men are taken. It's impossible not to put on weight during the holidays. Impossible is another absolute. Here's one. Everybody lies. I dated a guy one time who said, everybody lies, so that's why I'm never getting married. And I just remember being so disheartened by that, because I could then have said, well, I don't lie. But of course he's going to assume that that's a lie. So it's an uphill battle for me that I can't win. And he can't win because he spends his entire life living in a state of existence where no one can be trusted. It's like, wow, fucking question that story, right? Anyhow, another way to see if maybe you have a limiting belief around something is if anything triggers you. Like if a certain person or situation triggers you, then you very likely have a story around that issue. So like Do extroverted people annoy you? Like they're just so loud and they're too much. There's probably a story there that you should explore. Do you hate it? Do you get super uncomfortable when people start talking about money? What are your stories around money? Once you start to sort of notice these things, noticing them becomes infinitely easier. It's just sort of taking that first step to not just live on autopilot and actually stop and be like, wait, does this actually make sense? And believe me, it's like a muscle. It gets easier over time. So here is an exercise to help you identify stories around the major categories of your life that you place importance on. I'm going to include this list in the episode freebie that you guys can download. So I'll tell you the link at the end of the episode so that you can snatch that. And then you don't have to remember the categories as I'm going through them right now if you're driving or whatever you might be doing. So rank the following categories from 1 to 10. 1 being like everything in this category sucks, to 10 being like I'm living my best fucking life over here. All right, so these are the categories: relationship with your spouse, relationship with your family, career, professional development and business, finances and money management, personal health, well-being, sense of balance, recreation and social life, and the direction of your future. So rank those from 1 to 10. 10 is like, woohoo! And then for any category where you got 7 or below, write the description of what your situation is there right now and the reason why your score can't be higher. So the story you're telling yourself about why you can't grow in this area. So this might sound like I'm really unhappy at work because I'm totally ignored and not recognized for my contributions and talent. Why? Well, because people in management are too busy looking after their own careers to even bother with mine. So there's your rank. There's your story about why you have that rank. And then now look for evidence that does not support that story or that supports the opposing perspective. Challenge your assumptions, knowing that you are coming to the table with an information bias or negativity bias, which is a thing that I talk about on my blog all the time. It harkens back to our caveman years, to prehistoric times, where our brain, remembering scary instances so we can prevent ourselves from getting into similar situations in the future, was absolutely meant for survival. It's what protected us from dinosaurs and saber-toothed tigers, and all of that was very useful forever ago. Now, the threats aren't physical like that. They're psychological. So we are talking ourselves into focusing on negative things. So these stories probably are all like, oh, I can't make this change because it's impossible. It's outside of me. I don't have the control. That's a negativity bias. That is a focus that our brains have on protecting us from doing anything scary or outside of the box or that is a stretch. Our brains would rather be comfortable. So you're going to have to really challenge the stories that you've told yourself up to this point. Sometimes someone has told you something and you believe it because they seem to know a lot, which does not make it true. It pays to be careful about assuming something is true simply because other people, especially, or even lots of other people, believe it to be so. That doesn't make it true. And this sort of makes me chuckle. My pseudo stepdaughter, she's my kid, but she's not my kid by blood. When she was really, really young, I remember her coming home one day and saying they had learned about whales in school and whales had baleen. And I said, I think it's pronounced baleen. And she was like, absolutely not. Mrs. So-and-so says it's baleen. And I recognized in that moment that I no longer got the parental courtesy of, oh, she must know because she's a grown-up, that now the teacher had usurped that from me and the teacher knew everything. we do this. We do this with people who we admire or who we believe to be smarter than us. We accept what they say at face value often. And it's important to stop just swallowing everything hook, line, and sinker. Before giving someone authority, you can ask yourself this series of questions, and it will really help you make the decision for yourself. Ask, how much knowledge does this person have compared to me? If they are speaking to the subject that they got their doctorate, their PhD in, and you know nothing about that subject, then odds are good you can believe what they're saying, right? What knowledge do they have that I might not have or can't access? Do they have the keys to the secret book of the Illuminati? All right, I'm listening, right? This next one is my favorite. I employ this all the time as an empath in regards to whenever someone reacts in a way that surprises me or that doesn't make sense, I ask, how might they be biased? What stories might they have that would create that sort of reaction? That reaction that doesn't make sense to me because it seems disproportionate to the thing that was occurring prior to that reaction happened. It's really helpful. It helps put you in another person's shoes. How might this person be biased? What do I know about them? And in some cases you won't know, but in some cases it'll be like, I remember hearing that story. Like, great example. I was breaking up with a boyfriend, and I said to a good friend of mine, Brian, I said, he doesn't like me anymore. Like, something's wrong. We just don't have that camaraderie or that friendship anymore. And Brian said to me, oh, he's definitely cheating on you. Nothing about what I had just said would have pointed to the fact that he was definitely cheating on me. And a less secure person might have immediately freaked out. Like, why do you say that? Oh my God, do I have to look more closely at what's going on? I knew immediately, because Brian had been cheated on, that was why he said that to me. He almost didn't know how to look at it any other way. So it's a really good thing to ask yourself, how might this person telling me this thing that they are claiming is true, an absolute truth, how might they be biased? How might it serve them psychologically, emotionally, monetarily, professionally for me to accept that what they are saying is truth? Think about this if you're a woman who goes to an, unscrupulous mechanic and he's like, yeah, your transmission's going to fall out of your car if you drive it off the lot. I suggest you leave it overnight. It's going to be $700. I'm totally making up numbers. It could be $1 million. I don't know. But the point is, that professionally serves that person. So you might accept it as truth, or you can say, I might want a second opinion about this. It's just important to start to kind of see if someone stands to gain something by having you believe what they're saying. Maybe you ought to question it for at least a second. Finally, always ask yourself, is this in my best interest? This is my argument for conspiracy theorists. For anyone who believes in a conspiracy theory out there, look, I love fantasy. I love sci-fi. I can suspend my disbelief like a boss. It is fun. It is fun when someone comes at me with a conspiracy theory to be like, all right, I'm listening. Go. I will be open-minded. But then when I get to the end of the story, of the 3-hour documentary on QAnon, holy cow, that was long, I am left with, well, I could drop everything important and spend the next month researching to see if this is all true, because right now I'm not just going to accept it. Or I could just go back to my positive outlook and mostly trusting opinion of humans and reasonably rosy expectations that life is going to work out in my favor. I know that there are conspiracy theorists who would say it is in their best interest to believe the thing that they believe, and that making a bunker and laying in supplies is serving them. But I would argue that being paranoid and constantly looking over your shoulder and insisting that no human beings can be trusted is probably not a very healthy way to live. And I'm convinced that the people who feel that way have like liquid insides, and they're gray and mucky, because if the world ends tomorrow, at least I've died happy. At least I've died having a positive outlook on my life. And so that is how I phrase is this in my best interest? Does this get me to a place where I'm happy and pursuing my joy and living my best life? If it doesn't, I'm going to leave that story. I'll listen to you talk about it, and then I'm going to be like, thanks for the conversation. And then I'm going to go back to believing that people are inherently good. So it is only by finding the courage to challenge your stories that you will be able to rise above the limits that they have placed on you. And once you've done that, you are free to step in to your life more assertively and more successfully than you ever had before. So I'm going to leave you today with a quote from Julio Alaya because it is so perfect, so good at summing up what this episode was about. We are so full of answers to questions we have never even asked. Right? We are so full of answers to questions we have never even asked ourselves, you guys. So I'm going to leave you with that. If you want the freebie for today's episode, you can get that at jennyo'connor.com/assumptions. Assumptions. That's Jennie with an I-E, not a Y, O'Connor with an O-R, not an E-R. And I will drop that link here for you guys. If you have not already done so, please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes of the Courage series or that super extra important special episode coming up on perfectionism, which almost everyone I know needs to hear. And if you are loving what you're hearing, would you be a lamb? Oh my gosh, please. And just leave the quickest little review. 5 stars is good, but I really, really, really love it if you could just drop a little note about what you're enjoying, what you want to hear. Just makes my week to read those, you guys. So please, if you're so inclined, I'd be ever so grateful. And come join me over on the socials. I'm on the socials sometimes. Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram is my jam. That's where I am the most active, at Your Creative Fairy Godmother. And as always, thank you so much for being here with me today. Go challenge your assumptions, you guys. It's going to be life-changing. I can't wait to see what happens. I will talk to you very soon. Love you guys. Bye.